For Reaper Metal Productions, I am Adam of Unbaptized Records, here to make a new video for you today. Today I decided to go through my picture disc collection. It's going to be a two-part video. So this is part one, so if you're watching part two first, it doesn't really matter, there's no particular order. But today I'm going to do part one of my picture disc collection. Again, no particular order. I'm just going to go through them, talk about them real quick, go on to the next one. So first we have King Diamond's Them, their third album. Definitely my favorite. I really enjoyed hearing the song Welcome Home on in Clerks 2, so that's definitely one of the reasons I even checked them out, other than certain YouTubers talking about King Diamond being one of the best bands, at least from the 80s. So I definitely wanted to check them out. Started with this album, also picked up the first two on CD, but this one's definitely my favorite, probably because it's the first one I heard, but I also enjoy Voodoo. Some of the other 90s ones I just haven't listened to much, but I'm sure I'd like them if I listened to them. Um, Between just the awesome heavy metal sound of the 80s with the crazy high vocals of King Diamond and the kind of goofy but somewhat serious horror cheese music videos, it's kind of hard to hate this album. I really enjoy everything I've heard from King Diamond and also Merciful Fate so far, but this is definitely my favorite, and I think it was worth commemorating on picture disc. So I have it, and I like it, and put it up on my wall. And next we have a little change of pace from the previous record, but it's the first Pharmacist record. Unfortunately, they only did two records, and it looks like they're hanging it up after this. But this is definitely great carcass worship, early era gore grind, but from modern day. Japanese band, but I believe their vocalist, possibly only member, is from originally from Ukraine. Uh, First album, second album, both great picks. This one's a little bit less groovy. I think it gets a little bit more groovy with the second album, a little bit longer songs, but they're both really good. I only have this on picture disc and the second album on regular vinyl. I'd like to get them on CD, but as far as I could tell, there's no pressing just readily available, so I'll probably have to go on Discogs. But either way, it's definitely a great album if you like early era carcass gore grind. I would recommend picking it up. They have these two albums and a couple of splits and some EPs, and again, looks like that's about it. They just started about 5 years ago, and it looks like they already hung up the towels. So definitely recommend grabbing this album, Medical Renditions of Grinding Decomposition. Next, we have a very similar album, but from decades earlier, the band Pathologist. It's their, I think, first full length. I think they only maybe have two and some EPs, some comps, but essentially very similar. Early Carcass Worship. I think this came out in 91 or 92, but they only had albums and releases from about maybe 89 or 90 to like 93 or 4, and then they hung it up as well. It's too bad because it's really good, but at least they had some releases and they have a comp out there too. So if you don't want to go and grab all the individual releases, the physical CDs or whatever, they at least have some. I think they have one or two comps out there. So pretty much know what you're getting into. Early gore grind. Definitely recommend it if you like Carcass and anything that sounds like it. Next we have Throneum. This is a Polish black metal band. I just picked it up honestly because it was really cheap at my local record store. I think this was maybe $6 or $7. I'd heard of the band. I definitely have a soft spot for Polish bands, and I don't have a huge black metal collection, so I figured it was worth picking something up. Plus, there's a Deicide cover. I'm not sure which song, but I think it's off maybe like the third or fourth album. People almost always cover the first two, so the fact that they decided to cover Deicide for black metal album, that was pretty cool. Yeah, so Lunatic of God's Creation is covered on here, so I think that's pretty awesome. So definitely worth checking them out, and if you're going to pick up a picture disc by them for any reason, it's going to be really cheap because I don't think too many people know about the band, and even if they do, it's not super expensive, so you can easily get your hands on it. Now, something that may be a little more difficult to get your hands on is one of my Wreak of Death Records picture discs that I have. This one is Putrefaction, Painful Death. 3 songs, both sides, Severing Flesh, Putrefaction, Remains, and Painful Death. This was the band this is the band Grave before they were Grave. They also were Corpse at one point, I believe. But this is definitely worth picking up. There are only 300 copies, so if you don't get this, then kind of out of luck. But I don't know if there's any more copies left from Hell's Headbangers. I doubt it. So you might have to go to Discogs for that. And speaking of Wreak of Death records, I have, I think, about 4 picture discs. This is another one. This is Mayhem. So I'm not the biggest Mayhem fan, admittedly. I think their first couple releases are fine. This has some songs with Death singing on it, so everyone knows that Death vocals for Mayhem is super coveted. So to have this on picture disc is really cool. Again, Wreak of Death Records, limited to 250. I think it's great. It's a good era. I've never been a fan of the live stuff, so this is probably the only Death recording I'm going to get. Dead on vocals. So otherwise, I'm not really a big fan, and I'm not going to listen to the live stuff. So I don't really care that much. So I think that's probably a one and done for Mayhem, at least for bootlegs from that era. But I do have De Mysteriis, Dom Satanas. This is a back on black picture disc. Nothing really special. I think we all know what we're getting into when you get this. I actually, when I first heard this record, I thought Attila's vocals were really goofy. I'm not really the biggest fan, like I said, but I think it's definitely worth owning the classics. And if I'm going to spin it a couple times, commemorate it, picture disc, put it up on the wall, and then that's about it. So really don't need much more than the couple releases I have here, and that's pretty much it for me, for Mayhem. Other than this last one, which is, of course, Death Crush. EP, picture disc. Again, if you know Mayhem, pretty self-explanatory. I think this is decent. There's only a couple songs on here. Definitely some of their best stuff, but it's like, 2 different vocalists on here. Then you have Attila, and then you have Dead. It's amazing that a band that's this, only for a couple of years, they'd only been around a couple of years, and they had 3-4 different vocalists, and yet they're this amazing band. Maybe it's a controversial take, but I don't think they're that great, and that's why I only own these couple of records, and that's it. But I do own them. I at least gave them a chance. Now, a band I do definitely like, and I've only recently gotten more into, Mortician. So this is an official demo. Hell's Headbangers put this out, but if they are sold out, then you can also go to the websites of like Roger Bouchard of Mortician. Red Rum is one, and I think Primitive Recordings is his distro out of Vegas. That's where I bought a lot of the CDs, and it's signed by both him and Will. So this is really cool. I like this. Pretty sure it's the same 3 songs on both sides. Originally came out on like a 7-inch back in the day, I'm pretty sure. And then has that 7-inch art, but blown up to a 12-inch picture disc. So really cool. Definitely worth owning if you're a Tish fan. And if you're not, well then, I guess you're not worried about owning it. So then we have, I think, one more Wreak of Death Records picture disc, and then have another one for my part 2. So stick around for that. But this is Intuned Crawl, the EP that came out after Left Hand Path. This release just came out from Wreak of Death, and I usually try to keep up with their releases. This is awesome. Anything Intuned from pretty much this and earlier is all I really need. So I have this, I have Left Hand Path, and the Nihilist demos. Anything after that, I really don't feel like it's worth owning. I don't really care for it. So I think this was a great addition to the collection, and I'm probably not going to go past anything. Like pretty much the Nihilist demos, really what I enjoy the most, because even Left Hand Path, honestly, for all the Swedish death metal, kind of boring to me, at least that specific release. I love a lot of the other releases, but they never really did that much for me. And again, classic band sounds like it's being a heretic, but I'm just being honest. So owning the first couple releases is great. Anything after that I don't need, but I'm glad that this came out. And then last but not least, here I have the picture disc of Red is the Color of Ripping Death. This was the newest full length by Nunslaughter. You can see here it's signed by the band members, 3 of the 4. Very, very smudged signature in the middle by Tormentor, aka Noah. Dawn of the Dead signature up there actually came out pretty nice, and then Wrath, drummer, his kind of looks like a pencil because at that point my marker was basically dried out. And I think it was like a thin tip marker too. So, but this is definitely my favorite release by them. I'm not the biggest Nunslaughter fan, as I mentioned before. this is an awesome release. I own like 2 other pressings. I think the red vinyl and maybe the swamp green. I also have the CD. I think maybe 2 versions of the CD, 2 versions of the tape. So I definitely really enjoyed this. I think Noah's a great addition to the band, and he also does a lot of the recording, and then does a lot of stuff for other bands as well. He was a super cool dude when I got to meet him. So I definitely recommend that release, if anything, by them. If you're not the biggest, even if you're not the biggest Nunslaughter fan, still pick that one up. It's got a really warm sound to it. It's great. That's why I own so many releases of it. But that's it for now. I'm going to show you my part 2 in the next video, so stick around.